Welcome inside Back-to-Backer, presented by Snickers here on CBSSports.com. 'Tis the holiday season. Brady Quinn and Bart Scott once again joining me. Brady's in Fort Lauderdale at our CBSSports.com studios. Bart is in Baltimore, a former Ravens player. 10 years, Bart, you've been doing your charity, gift giving, and a skating party at Hot Skate with Belmont Elementary. So congratulations on 10 years doing that. And I am in San Diego for a Kansas at San Diego State basketball game Tuesday night on CBS Sports Network. So we're everywhere, but we always make time for Back-to-Backer. Let's get rolling. 4 quarters and into overtime. First quarter, Brady, Odell Beckham Jr., 3 personal fouls, a head-to-head helmet hit against Josh Norman in that Giants-Panthers game last night. When the league goes to review his behavior, are we looking at a possible suspension? Have you ever seen anything get so personal in a game between 2 players like you saw last night?
No, I mean, I've never seen such a blatant cheap shot during the course of a game, and you can't help but try to blame the officials because these are the guys that should have been controlling this the whole time. He should have been ejected after that play anyways and not been allowed to remain on the field. I mean, it was as blatant as it gets. It looked like a child throwing a tantrum. But look, this is what happens when you have a lockdown corner going up against one of the premier wide receivers in the NFL. You expect to have some jawing going back and forth and some fights and so forth, but you don't expect a guy to lose his cool like that. One, it's not very professional, and 2, it doesn't say much about the organization or the team that you're playing for and representing. But I do think this is in part because everyone's built up Odell Beckham's ego so high at this point that now that he's struck with a little bit of adversity going against one of the best corners in the game, this is how he reacts. And this is basically the blueprint for defending him here on out. But I will say this, they better do something about it. They better suspend Odell Beckham Jr. going into this next week's game. Otherwise, you're setting a bad precedence. And if you're Roger Goodell, you know, he's handled a lot of these off-the-field issues and seemed to bring down the hammer sometimes on that. This is an on-the-field issue. This is something that it shouldn't even be debated. He should be suspended for a game, and that is something that shouldn't be debatable with Roger Goodell. That's part of his job.
Well, I tell you what, this is very Bush League of Odell Beckham. You talk about, you know, one of the rising stars in this league, and what happened is he finally force met force, and now he's being hunted. He has people that's chasing after him. You know, now Josh Norman's trying to make a name of him, and he looked like a child throwing a temper tantrum, you know, as Brady alluded to. But also, he broke the brother rule code. And where's the leadership from Tom Coughlin to pull him to the side and tell him, listen, this isn't going to be accepted? Where's the discipline at? You know, you think about Tom Coughlin and all the rules he had before about the socks and the way we carry ourselves in a professional manner. That was not professional. And also, where's the teammates on the side? Where's his peers pulling him to the side? On the other sideline, we saw Cam Newton, we saw Luke Kuechly pulling Josh Norman to the side, telling him that he's making it more about himself and not the team. You know, so I think Roger Goodell has no choice but to suspend Odell Beckham. You think about Keith Talib in the eye poke. You know, this was dangerous. Talk about player safety. You know, when I played, we had a way of handling this type of stuff on the field. And if the referees couldn't take control of the game, we could have taken control of the game. And, you know, Odell Beckham would have had 1 or 2 choices. He could either leave the game on his back or he would have left the game on his face.
You know, I feel like every NFL team has enforcers on the defensive and offensive side of the football. I would imagine, Bart, you were that, whether it was with the New York Jets or the Baltimore Ravens. I remember back to my young years with the Cleveland Browns, Ryan Tucker was one of our tackles. He was that guy on the offensive side of the ball. And I think everyone should, because really when it comes down to it, everyone's out there to compete and they enjoy the game of football, not necessarily take cheap shots at one another and be able to, you know, try to cut down or cut away from a guy's career.
At the end of the day, this is a brotherhood. We're on an elite fraternity. Only so many people are ever allowed in it. So at some point, we have to protect each other as the fraternity. And if somebody doesn't want to do that, then, you know, it becomes a cold red.
Keep in mind, if that suspension does go through for Odell Beckham Jr., that's the Sunday night game against the Minnesota Vikings for the Giants. All right, elsewhere in New York, second quarter, the Buffalo Bills eliminated from playoff contention on Sunday afternoon, extending their playoff drought to 16 years. So Rex Ryan was not able to swoop in and save the day. Brady, if you had to give head coach Rex Ryan a grade in his first season with the Bills, what would that grade be?
I mean, it's tough to tell. It's his first season with the team. A B? I mean, he came in kind of talking a big game and talking about a lot of the things that were going to take place for the Bills this season. But the fact of the matter is no one in the AFC East really kind of brought about or made good on the promises besides the New England Patriots. Now the Jets have an opportunity to still make it into the playoffs, but they lose out to the Chiefs and to the Steelers with a tiebreaker, so they might not even make it in. But I think when you look at the Buffalo Bills and really the synopsis of their season, it's going to be that they found their quarterback for the future in Tyrod Taylor, which is great for the offensive side of the football with all those weapons that they have. The problem is the defense, which doesn't make really any sense considering it's Rex Ryan, who's a defensive-minded guy. That's their head coach. And they've actually taken a step back from a year ago before Rex got there. So they've got to go into the offseason and try to figure some things out, because I don't know if it's either the scheme or just a lack of effort. But surprisingly, the defense is the thing that's actually holding back the Buffalo Bills right now. But they've got a couple of nice wins. You know, they got a nice win early in the season versus Andrew Luck and the Indianapolis Colts, as well as the New York Jets earlier as well. So, I mean, overall, I'd say a B. I thought he did at least a competitive job. I mean, the Buffalo Bills seem to be competitive in the majority of their matchups.
Well, I have to give my old coach a C-, possibly incomplete. Because this team is capable of being much better than what is performed on the football field. But one thing that he didn't do when he came over, when I went and visited and did the sit-down special, I saw all the coaches that he's familiar with, all the guys that he trusted. When I looked on the football field, I didn't see any of his guys. Part of Rex's success when we was in the New York Jets, he brought myself over, Jim Leonard, Marquise Douglas. Those were coaches inside the locker room, guys that were continuing to push his message. Now you hear rumblings from Mario Williams, who hasn't performed as well, complaining. So now what Rex is going to have to do is he's going to have to get those cancers out of the locker room. You hear Sammy Watkins talking about guys not buying in, guys not performing, guys not executing. So Rex is going to have to go in, get some of his guys in there. He's going to have to build that locker room, that team, with the type of guys that he wants and the type of guys that fit his scheme. Mario Williams has complained about not agreeing with the system, but 2 years before underneath Mike Pettin, he was highly successful underneath that system. One thing I do know, Rex hasn't forgotten how to coach defense in 1 year. So I think guys have to buy in, guys have to pull the rope all in one direction, and if they can't, he has to kick them off the boat.
Hey, Bart, I'm curious, is it too much blitzing? Is it too much trying to not just utilize the guy's natural abilities and talent for a guy like Mario Williams? What do you see it as a defensive player? What do you see the issue for the Buffalo Bills?
Well, with me breaking down Mario Williams this year, Mario Williams has never been a guy who was capable of beating people with quickness and speed. He's a massive guy. He used his length. But what happens is now, all you have to do is stand in his way for a little bit, and now teams are getting the ball out faster. So now he can't generate that pass rush, because he's not a Von Miller. He's not one of these guys that can beat you with speed around the corner and turn that corner. He's a guy that beats you with speed using a long arm stab, and he really hasn't bought in. If you look on the other side, Hughes is flourishing within the system because he's a fast twitch type of guy. Mario Williams is complaining. He's trying to argue his way out of a bad situation for himself.
All right, a B and a C- for Rex Ryan in his first year. One of those two grades I saw more often than not on my own report card, and you can let your imagination wander with that one. On to the third quarter. Aqib Talib and Chris Harris, the cornerbacks for the Denver Broncos, deemed their secondary a no-fly zone. Brady, are they going to have to change that nickname after Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown sliced them up?
I don't know. I don't think so. I just think they're going up against arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. Antonio Brown's giving people fits all season long, and Chris Harris admitted it after the game. He just had a bad game. I don't think they got maybe as much pressure as they would have liked to on Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, and you look at the Denver Broncos defense, I think they've got possibly two of the best tandem corners in the NFL right now. But going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, you've got to have three solid defensive backs to match up with Antonio Brown, Martavius Bryant, and Marcus Wheaton. I mean, those are three pretty solid targets, arguably the best in the NFL on the offensive side of the football. So I don't think they need to change their name. They just got to continue to keep finding ways to getting pressure on the quarterback more often, because that's really what's made their job effective. When you get pressure on the quarterback, and Bart knows this best, those defensive backs don't have to cover quite as long. They can come up, make interceptions, and make plays. And that's kind of been the difference over the past few weeks, where I think their secondary struggled a little bit compared to that number one defense that we saw kind of coming out of the gates in this NFL season.
Well, what happens is now they have a huge sample size. Listen, Ben Roethlisberger and that offense and Todd Haley has done this to everybody. Did it to the Legion of Boom, put over 500 yards of offense up. DeAngelo Williams has created balance. But what happens is sometimes when you're a premier player, you don't want help. You look at it as an insult. You don't realize and underestimate just how good that tandem is. I think if they were to face them again, it would maybe come out a little differently. They'll perform a lot better because now they've seen it. Now you understand that, hey, we have to help against this guy. We have to bracket this guy. You think about some of the teams that are familiar with the Steelers who have success in spurts, the Baltimore Ravens and sometimes the Cincinnati Bengals. You think about the first game with the Cincinnati Bengals and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, what was the difference? They see them a lot, so they understand what they do well, and they understand their route tree and what routes they're comfortable with and what they're not comfortable with. I think the Denver Broncos underestimated just the talent that was on that side. And Ben Roethlisberger is an elite quarterback. He's seen it all. He's been through it all. He's a guy that can stand in the pocket and deliver the ball. It doesn't matter how many times you hit him. He just gets stronger as the game progresses. And I think what really is going to hurt the Pittsburgh Steelers in the long haul is, their inefficiency to stop the pass as well.
I will say this. I was pleased to see the comments by Chris Harris after the game in comparison to Josh Norman and Odell Beckham Jr., two of the top, I guess, cornerbacks and wide receivers going at it. You look at the one example with Norman and Odell Beckham Jr., and they're having fights, throwing fist punches at one another left and right. Then you have Chris Harris and Antonio Brown going at it all game long. Antonio Brown got the better of the matchup. Chris Harris respectfully says, yeah, I got beat today. He was better than me today. That's what you'd like to see out of the NFL when you have these sorts of matchups.
Absolutely. Chris Harris.
All right, let's go on to very classy guy. Let's go on to the fourth quarter. The Kansas City Chiefs, following a 5-game losing streak, the only NFL to tail that with an 8-game win streak. However, only 2 of those 8 games have come against teams with a record of better than 500. Brady, do you think they're getting enough love in Kansas City for this streak? Are they underestimated right now?
I don't think they're underestimated. I think, look, people are giving them credit for the streak that they're on, but it's been in part because of the schedule, like you mentioned, and you talk about the 2 wins that they have over teams who are above 500. That's the Denver Broncos and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, who was playing quarterback for those teams at that time? Well, it was Peyton Manning for part of that game where he had one of the worst performances because of that plantar fasciitis injury that he's still dealing with now, and then came in Brock Osweiler at the end over Denver. Then you look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. It wasn't Ben Roethlisberger. It was Landry Jones. So even in those 2 wins over those teams over 500, it still really weren't taking their best shot. So I think that's where they're not getting quite as much credit. They obviously lost Jamal Charles earlier this season. He was the best player on their offense, possibly on their team. And I think that's why if people look at this team, and right now they're in contention to make it into the playoffs. They obviously have a tiebreaker over the New York Jets, and they sit in that number 5 spot. And I think people look at them and say, well, they might make it into the playoffs, but they're not going to be able to do much damage because their offense lacks the ability to really make the big plays and hurt you in the passing games. Alex Smith has only thrown 6 touchdown passes to wide receivers this season. He threw 0 to a wide receiver last season. They seem to play that game where they run the football well, they play good defense, but they really don't have that much else to offer. I just don't know how that really stacks up or compares against some of the best teams in the NFL.
Listen, that used to be the scouting report on Alex Smith. Now it's addition by subtraction. With the loss of Jamal Charles, you see the same thing happening in Seattle. This is forcing Alex Smith to be aggressive and take chances down the field. Now Jeremy Maclin is stretching the field out. He's almost over 1,000 yards receiving. Travis Kelce is one of the best pass-catching, run-after-the-catch tight ends in the game. And so Scandrick West is playing well. So that's the recipe. You want in the playoffs on the road, you want to take your defense and you want to pack a running game. They have both, and people underestimate Alex Smith's pedigree and his ability to make plays and extend drives with his legs as well. So I'm really excited about what the Kansas City Chiefs can do in the playoffs. And let me tell you something, nobody wants to play this team in the playoffs. They have 2 pass rushers on the outside, and I think Eric Berry has passed Earl Thomas as the top 5 safety in the game. He's come back from his fight, his bout against cancer, and he's finally starting to look like himself again. And with that, when you have playmakers on the outside, Marcus Peters, 2 interceptions last week, a touchdown, 1 return for a touchdown. You have playmakers at every position on that defense. When you have a defense and you can keep the chains moving, you can really limit the possessions in the game. And I think that's what makes the Kansas City Chiefs so dangerous out in the playoffs.
Yeah, but the biggest thing they have working for them is the fact that the AFC right now has got a quarterback issue looking at the playoffs. I mean, you look at the Denver Broncos, it might be Brock Osweiler. We don't know how long Peyton Manning is going to be out. Then you look at the Cincinnati Bengals with Andy Dalton out. It could be A.J. McCarron if they're going to make it, in which I think they will. And then you look at the Houston Texans, who right now are at #1 in the AFC South. I mean, who's going to be playing quarterback? Is it Brandon Weeden? Will Brian Hoyer be back?
It's me.
T.J. Yates? Who knows? So we'll have to wait and see.
That's
like
a really
that
good
chance.
point, the quarterback rotation.
I've been on ugly teams like that.
Yeah, plus for the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid said, you know, people might have written them off when Jamal Charles got hurt, but sometimes that really brings offenses together. The Chiefs are lurking right now as they perhaps hit the postseason. All right, into overtime. We're going to do this a little differently this time. Pop quiz. I know this will be hard for you, Bart Scott, but you can use only one word to answer each of the next 3 questions. I'm always going to go to Brady first, then Bart, and then I guess I'll answer the question too. But you get one, and that's all you get. So you guys ready?
I guess.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. One word, your go-to pizza topping.
Oh, pepperoni.
Extra cheese.
That's 2 words, Bart. You're the worst. Mine would be mushrooms. Okay.
Oh, gross.
Pop or soda? Pop or soda?
Neither. I don't drink it.
No, what word would you use? Is it
Midwest.
pop or is it
Pop.
soda?
Oh, pop. Yeah, pop.
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 Pop. Yep, it is pop. All right, would you date a Kardashian?
We're Midwest. We're from the Midwest. We all use pop.
No, I would not date a Kardashian. I don't want all the baggage and stuff that comes in. No, sorry. Too long.
The Kardashians don't date white guys.
I wouldn't, because my only option is Rob. All right, that was it. That was your pop quiz. You guys kind of followed the rules the right way, but that was back-to-backer. You guys each got A+. You're the best in my book, in my opinion. Back-to-backer presented by Snickers this week here on CBSSports.com. Bart's in Baltimore, Brady's in Fort Lauderdale. I'm in San Diego. Thanks for watching.